Now, from Atlanta News First, the issues that matter to you. This is On the Record.
The assassination of conservative political activist Charlie Kirk 6 days ago while speaking before a group at Utah Valley University sent shockwaves throughout the nation and the world, and its after effects continue to permeate the fabric of the American political consciousness. Today is Wednesday, September 17th. This is your On the Record national podcast, heard on your favorite podcasting platform and also viewable on YouTube. Joined, as always, by Atlanta News First anchor and host of On the Record with Atlanta News First, Rick Bolbaum. I'm Tim Darnell. Rick, we had a planning meeting ahead of today's podcast yesterday, and we were looking at some of the national issues and the implications that this horrific event has had. I want to play, first of all, before we get into our discussion, Atlanta News First anchor and reporter Joe Gorshow attended a vigil last night held in Woodstock, for Charlie Kirk. Let's play this report and listen to the comments of some of those who were in attendance.
We've seen vigils held across the nation in different cities and across different university campuses. On Tuesday night, right here in Woodstock, just a little ways behind me here, many residents, hundreds, if not more than 1,000, gathered to do the same, pray and remember the life of Charlie Kirk. A prayerful song echoes among the hundreds honoring Charlie Kirk's life.
Tonight we're here to honor the life of Charlie Kirk.
Behind Reformation Brewery in downtown Woodstock, people grief-stricken over Kirk's death reflect on the legacy he left behind.
His knowledge and his passion and his loyalty.
His love and respect.
Get rid of the hatred, bring light to America and all the people that want to come together and speak the truth.
Last week, conservative activist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed while speaking at a college campus event in Utah. On Tuesday, the suspect accused in Kirk's killing appeared in court.
State of Utah versus Tyler James Robinson. Could you state your name?
Tyler James Robinson.
Tyler Robinson faces 7 charges, including aggravated murder and witness tampering. A Utah prosecutor said he will seek the death penalty.
Charlie Kirk was murdered while engaging in one of our most sacred and cherished American rights.
Charlie Kirk's suspected killer allegedly texted his roommate the day of the shooting and discussed his rifle and possible motive. Exchanges revealed in the charging documents released by Utah County officials. Some include, quote, "Drop what you're doing, look under my keyboard. I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." Back in Georgia, in Woodstock, the prayers for Kirk and his family echo.
We're about God and family.
Kirk's alleged killer, Robinson, will be held without bail. Also, the judge has appointed Robinson an attorney with his next court hearing set for September 29th. Reporting from Woodstock, Joe Gorshow, Atlanta News First.
Now, that was a vigil held last night in Woodstock here in Metro Atlanta. Rick, the political fallout and the reverberations that we were talking about earlier are really coming from and aimed towards individuals who have reacted in a somewhat controversial manner on social media in response to Charlie Kirk's death. Take us through some of the comments and observations that national political leaders are making in regards to individuals who are expressing, as I said, controversial opinions about what happened last Friday in Utah.
Well, we have so far seen about 30, and I'm sure maybe that number has gone up since I last checked, but about 30 different private companies and businesses and who have fired or disciplined employees for making comments that they did not like on social media in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination. Some of these people pointing out some of the things that Charlie Kirk has said in the past, notably about the Second Amendment, and pointing out that that this was something that perhaps should have been anticipated. Anyway, these were comments that private companies and businesses did not like and did not think that it reflected well on them. And so we've seen different, for example, universities and hospital groups here in the metro Atlanta area, the school board here in Cobb County, which is one of the largest school districts in the metro Atlanta area, investigating teachers who made comments after the assassination. And this comes down to First Amendment and really what is protected and what's not. And I think that it's important to point out that our First Amendment protects speech from the government. The government shall not infringe upon people's free speech, even if that speech is deemed, hateful or disgusting or reprehensible. That speech is still protected. Now, the First Amendment does not protect people's speech when it comes to private companies. If you work for a company or an organization, that company or an organization has the ability to discipline or even fire employees if those employees make public statements or comments on social media that are determined to be detrimental to the overall reputation of the company. And so Delta Airlines, for example, which of course is based here in Atlanta, disciplining some employees, and again other companies as well, a whole long list of them. And we're even hearing now from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who has gone on to a lot of different podcasts and media outlets, talking about the need to crack down on this type of speech. Now, this, of course, is a controversial statement on the part of the Attorney General, given that that free speech does cover any kind of infringement from the government itself. In fact, the Wall Street Journal's editorial page, which is not exactly known as a liberal bastion, they wrote an editorial saying that the Attorney General needs a lesson in the First Amendment, arguing that this speech is protected. And that's really sort of what it comes down to, I think, in a lot of people's views, is that that this kind of speech, a private company is another matter, but when it comes to the government trying to crack down on this type of speech, that is something that is not appropriate. But clearly, in the week since the assassination, we're seeing a lot of different people, both in government and out, grappling with what is acceptable, what is unacceptable, and it seems like that debate is going to continue in the coming days as we get closer and closer to Charlie Kirk's funeral, which will take place this Sunday. I'm interested in seeing what changes after the funeral takes place, that perhaps there are a lot of people who may be holding their fire right now, not criticizing Charlie Kirk and some of the things that he has said, not wanting to point them out now so soon after his horrific assassination. But once the funeral is passed, I do think that there's going to be a difference in tone, and I think that there's going to be a difference in the way that people sort of self-monitor when it comes to pointing out some of the things about Charlie Kirk and things that he was known to say that really might not be in line with mainstream America.
And let's talk a little bit more about some of the political reverberations. I want to read this quote from U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, who said, "In America, people are allowed to say crazy things. If I have someone in my employ celebrating the murder of an innocent person, I can make the decision that they don't deserve to work for me. I have every right to do that." That is obviously a private company's right. But let's go back a little bit more about the First Amendment issue. You mentioned Attorney General Pam Bondi saying that hate speech will be prosecuted. I'm sort of paraphrasing to the fullest extent of the law. What kind of legal issues are there going forward in adopting that kind of judicial philosophy?
Well, I mean, that's what you're exactly right. And I should say that I am not an attorney, although I've covered First Amendment cases and took a class in First Amendment law when I was in journalism school. But again, these are cases I think it's going to be very interesting to see exactly who steps forward to defend the right of people who may have said things that were deemed offensive, inappropriate, reprehensible, but still protected. And that's really what it comes down to. I remember learning a lesson years ago about the ACLU coming to the defense of the KKK, which wanted to hold a rally in a town called Skokie, Illinois. And of course, it was a big Jewish population in that town, and it was obviously a rally and a march that they wanted to hold in order to inflame tensions there. Obviously, the KKK, a very racist and bigoted and anti-Semitic organization, and so a lot of controversy about their request to hold a rally and a march in Skokie, Illinois. But the ACLU defended the KKK's right to hold that march, and there is a famous quote that I've heard over the last week or so, and that is that I may not agree with what you're saying, but I will fight to the death to make sure that you have the right to say it. And I think that that's really what we're going to see in the weeks ahead as this conversation begins to broaden a bit. And as I said, I expect people to start sort of talking more about some of the things that Charlie Kirk talked about, some of the messages that he sent, in his many speeches. And obviously, he was a proponent of the First Amendment and was actually engaging in free speech at the time of his assassination. But I do think that in the weeks after his funeral, we are going to hear people come out more critically against some of the things that he said, and how those statements are treated will be very interesting to watch.
We have more reports from our local staff here at Atlanta News First, giving some local reaction to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Let's hear one of these reports right now.
Tone the rhetoric down. I'm not going to point the finger at anybody for that. I don't think that's going to help. But we cannot normalize things like this occurring.
The deadly shooting of Charlie Kirk, the conservative political activist killed while speaking at Utah Valley State University, sparking yet another conversation around political violence. Republican and Bibb County GOP president shared that he was shocked to learn of Kirk's death.
I've watched Charlie Kirk on videos and on TV and podcasts and seen how he talks to people and how he brings people into the fold that may disagree with him, but he wants to know why they disagree, and he wants to explain himself and how he thinks he's right versus what they think.
Local Democrats in Houston County agree with the GOP that we all should be able to use our rights of free speech without fear of being harmed. However, it's important to be mindful of the rhetoric used.
The First Amendment gives us all the right to be critical of our government. I think it crosses the line when you're saying things that are violent or incendiary. Or
we are a country that has, free speech. You're allowed to say what you want, but we can still have civil discourse and, persuade people based on our ideas and values versus, holding a gun to somebody's head.
The moral of the story being that it's better to agree to disagree.
But we don't need to resort to violence to tell somebody we disagree. Let's have a civil conversation.
The 22-year-old suspect, Tyler Robinson, is now in custody. I'm Destin Howard reporting.
And at some point, this fever has to break.
Georgia GOP Chairman Josh McCoon calling for cooler heads to prevail, days after conservative activist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed in Utah. McCoon knew Kirk personally and spoke on his talk show multiple times.
Just an extraordinary person. I'll never see somebody like this in my lifetime, I don't believe.
McCoon criticized Democrats after Kirk's death for stoking the flames in a politically tense climate.
We need to have more voices, particularly more voices on the political left in this country, that are willing to say, Political violence is wrong, full stop.
This is getting to be as bad as I've seen it.
Andrea Young, executive director of the ACLU of Georgia, said she's especially concerned here in Georgia where you can publicly carry a firearm. Even still, she stressed civil discourse must be always protected.
As ACLU, we try to talk about facts, about evidence, about positions, and not disparage people or their character. And I think that is a line that should not be crossed.
With many of the ACLU's large events and rallies held outside, Young said she will reconsider which venues she will speak at during the threatening political climate.
I think it's very important that people, we resurrect the nonviolent philosophy that has been so important in the Atlanta that we see today, in the country that we see today.
The funeral of Charlie Kirk will be held Sunday, September 21st. Also on Sunday, September 21st at 11 a.m. On the Record with Atlanta News First. We'll host our weekly broadcast, and Rick and you and political reporter Doug Reardon host this outstanding newest addition to Atlanta's political recording and political coverage team here in the city. The last 24 hours have seen really a remarkable series of developments in Georgia's governor's race. Tell us really quick what we've seen in terms of new candidates and some of the other issues that we're going to be talking about this coming Sunday on the Record with Atlanta News First.
Well, Tim, thank you. Yeah, we are going to continue to cover, of course, the political fallout from the Kirk assassination. We'll talk about that. But as you said, there has been a flurry of developments just in the last 24 hours when it comes to some of the major races here in Georgia, including a new candidate for governor. Republican Secretary of State Bob Raffensperger has announced that he is running as a Republican. Jeff Duncan, who is the former Republican lieutenant governor of Georgia, announcing that he will be running as a Democrat. And so we'll be talking about all of those issues with our panel coming up this weekend on the Record, which airs Sunday at 11 on Atlanta News First.
We'll be following, obviously, this week, several former high-ranking officials for the Atlanta-based Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are testifying before Congress. A number of controversial developments still in that regard. This has been your weekly midweek on the Record national podcast for Wednesday, September 17th. I've got September 21st on the brain. That is coming up this Sunday on the Record with Atlanta News First at 11 a.m. broadcast on WANF. Also watch and listen to all of the On the Record podcasts, including this one, this coming Sunday show, and all of the On the Record episodes on Spotify, YouTube. You watch it on YouTube, listen on Spotify, iTunes, or your favorite podcasting platform. For Rick Folbaum, I'm Tim Darnell.
Thank you for watching ANF Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and your community stories, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch us on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. To join the conversation on YouTube Live, visit our channel and hit subscribe. You can also listen to the Atlanta News First podcast by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.